The laughter hit me before I even reached the table. Not happy laughter, the kind that lands like a slap, soft on the outside, sharp underneath. I stepped into the private dining room and saw my sister, Morgan Thorne, glowing in the center like she owned the air. Her engagement ring flashed every time she moved her hand, and she kept moving it like she was ringing a bell for attention. My mom spotted me and gave that smile she saved for strangers and disappointments. "There she is," she said, too loud, "our late bloomer." A couple of relatives chuckled. I kept my face calm and walked to my seat. Except my seat wasn't at the main table. It was at the very end near the swinging kitchen door, where the waiters rushed in and out like I was furniture they had to squeeze past. I didn't complain. I didn't ask questions. I just pulled out the chair and sat down like it didn't matter. Because when your family's been doing this for years, you learn something important. If you react, they win twice. My name is Tatum Walsh. I'm 26, and in my family, that's the age where you're either successful or you're the example they use to scare the younger cousins. Morgan was the golden child. Straight A's, perfect job, perfect friends. Everything she touched turned into a highlight reel. Me, I was the detour, the wasted potential, the one who used to be smart until she got emotional. Tonight was Morgan's engagement dinner, and the whole room was dressed like a celebration. Candlelight, champagne, glossy menus, that expensive smell of steak and money. But my family didn't invite me to celebrate. They invited me to sit there and feel small. My Aunt Margot leaned toward my cousin and said loud enough for me to hear, "She's still doing that little online thing, right?" My cousin snorted. "You mean that company she won't stop talking about?" I reached for my water and took a slow sip. Morgan's fiancé, Carter Prescott, sat beside her. He looked calm, polished, the type of man who always knew what to say in public. He smiled at everyone, shook hands, acted like he'd been trained for rich family dinners. My mom raised her glass. "Tonight is about Morgan," she announced, voice sweet as syrup. "She's always been focused, always been determined. She never let distractions pull her off track." Then her eyes slid to me, and that's why she's the one we can count on. More laughter. Quiet, polite, poisonous. Morgan tilted her head like an angel, pretending she didn't hear it. "Mom, stop," she said while smiling. Then she turned to me. "Tatum," she asked, "tell everyone what you've been up to." There it was, the spotlight I didn't ask for. I stared at my plate. I could have lied and made it easy. I could have said, "I'm between jobs," just to give them the story they wanted. But I didn't. "I've been working," I said simply. Morgan blinked like she'd hoped for something sadder. "Working? Where?" "At my business." My dad leaned back in his chair and laughed like it was a joke meant for him. "A business," he repeated, amused. "Tatum, be serious." My throat tightened, but my voice stayed steady. "I am serious." My mom sighed dramatically, like my words exhausted her. "Honey, we just want you to be realistic. Morgan is starting a real life, a real future." Morgan's smile sharpened. "And honestly, it's okay if you're behind. Some people just take longer." Behind. That word followed me like a shadow. I kept my hands folded in my lap so nobody would see my fingers tense. Then, quietly, I felt it. A shift. Carter wasn't looking at Morgan anymore. He was staring at me. Not in a rude way, more like he just recognized a face from somewhere he couldn't explain. He leaned slightly toward me, careful, like he didn't want the room to notice, but the room noticed anyway. Carter's voice dropped low. "Wait, Tatum Walsh," he murmured. "Are you the one who—" Morgan's smile froze. My mom's fork paused in midair. Even my dad went quiet. The entire table leaned into the silence like it was a cliff edge. Carter swallowed, eyes locked on mine, and finished the question in a whisper that somehow echoed anyway. "Are you the founder of Forrester Solutions?" The room stopped breathing, and I didn't rush to answer. I let the silence stretch, just long enough for them to feel what I'd felt for years, small, uncertain, afraid of what the truth might be. I slowly lifted my eyes to Morgan, and for the first time all night, my voice didn't shake at all. "Yeah," I said, "that's me." You could have heard a breath fall. That was how quiet the table became after I answered. Morgan's smile didn't disappear. It cracked just enough to let panic show through. Her fingers tightened around Carter's arm, not affectionately but possessively, like she was afraid he might drift out of her control. "That's funny," she said, laughing too quickly. "Carter, you're mixing things up. Tatum has always had big ideas." Big ideas. The same words she'd used for years when she meant delusions. Carter didn't laugh. He didn't look at Morgan at all. Instead, he leaned back in his chair slowly, studying me like he was putting puzzle pieces together that suddenly made sense. "No," he said calmly, "I don't think I am." My mother cleared her throat, the sound sharp with nerves. "Carter, dear, maybe this isn't the time." "I'm pretty sure it is," he replied, polite but firm. That was when my dad finally spoke. "Tatum," he said carefully, like he was walking through glass, "what exactly did you mean by founder?" Every eye locked onto me again. This time I didn't feel small. I felt steady. "I mean," I said evenly, "that 2 years ago when I left my job and everyone said I was throwing my life away, I started a logistics software company, quietly, without investors from this table." My Aunt Margot blinked. "Software?" "Yes." My cousin Sloane whispered, "Like real software?" I nodded once. "Enterprise level." Morgan let out a soft laugh that sounded close to a plea. "Okay, this is getting weird. Tatum, you don't have to exaggerate just because tonight's important." Carter finally turned to her. "Morgan," he said gently but with an edge, "I've seen the contracts." Her face drained of color. "What contracts?" my mom asked. Carter stood, buttoning his jacket slowly. "The ones your sister's company signed with North Shore Freight and Gray Line Systems and 2 international carriers." My heart beat once. Solid, calm. He continued, "I work with acquisition teams. We reviewed Walsh and Associates last quarter." The words landed like dominoes. My dad stared at Carter. "Reviewed for what?" Carter glanced at me, then back at my family. "For a potential buyout." Morgan shot to her feet so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "That's not funny," she snapped. "Why are you doing this?" I finally stood too, not to confront her, but to stand beside her. "There's something you should know," I said quietly. "I didn't come tonight to announce anything." My mom looked shaken now. "Then why?" "I came because this was Morgan's night, and I didn't want my absence to become another story about how I couldn't handle her success." Morgan's eyes burned. "So this is revenge?" I shook my head. "No, this is reality catching up." Carter stepped back slightly, giving us space. "Morgan," he said gently, but with an edge, "you told me Tatum was struggling." I said she was still figuring things out. "She is," I replied calmly, "just not in the way you wanted." My dad rubbed his temples. "Tatum, how much is this company worth?" There it was, the question that always came last. "I'm not selling, but the last valuation was 8 figures. The silence after that was different. No mockery, no laughter, just shock. My mom sat down slowly. 8 figures? I nodded. Margot's mouth opened, then closed. "But you never said anything." "I tried," I said gently. "You told me to stop dreaming." Morgan looked like she'd been punched. "You let me think you were behind." I met her eyes. "You wanted to think that." Carter exhaled, almost impressed. "That explains a lot." Morgan turned on him. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said carefully, "that when I asked you why you were pushing so hard for a prenup clause that limited shared assets, I said it was just good planning." Her lips trembled. "Carter."
But now, he continued, I'm realizing you were trying to protect yourself from your own sister. My mom gasped. Morgan, is that true? Morgan's voice rose, sharp and desperate. I was being smart. Tatum has always tried to compete with me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I wasn't competing, I said calmly. I was surviving. Carter looked between us, then straightened. I think we should pause the celebration.
The word pause hit Morgan harder than stop would have. You can't be serious, she whispered. I am, he replied. There are things I need to reconsider. My family watched him like he was the sun slipping out of orbit. I picked up my purse. Tatum, my mom said softly, you're leaving? I nodded. I didn't come to take anything from Morgan. Then I looked at my sister, really looked at her. I just needed you all to stop taking things from me. Carter held the door open as I passed. Outside, the night air was cool and clean, like the world had reset. Tatum, he said, stopping me gently, for what it's worth, I respect what you built. I smiled. Thank you. As I walked away, my phone buzzed. A message from my COO. Deal confirmed, expansion approved, congratulations. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Behind me, the engagement dinner unraveled. Ahead of me, a life that finally belonged to me. And for the first time, I didn't feel behind at all. I didn't go home after the dinner. I drove. No destination, no music, just the quiet hum of the road and the feeling in my chest that came when something heavy finally cracked open. Not pain, relief. By the time I stopped, the city lights were blurring into one long ribbon, and my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls, messages, names I hadn't heard from in years. Family? I didn't answer. The first message I read was from my mom. Tatum, why didn't you tell us? I let out a short laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. I typed nothing back. The second was from my dad. We're proud of you, we just didn't understand. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. They always understood enough to judge, just not enough to listen. I finally pulled into my apartment garage and sat there, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. The old version of me would have rushed back, tried to smooth things over, tried to make everyone comfortable again, but comfort had always come at my expense. Inside, I kicked off my shoes and let myself sit on the floor, not because I was broken, but because I didn't have to stand tall for anyone anymore. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Morgan. I hesitated, then answered. She snapped before I could speak. I stayed calm. I want peace. She laughed bitterly. You humiliated me. I didn't say a word you didn't force out of me. There was silence, then quieter. You let me think I was better than you. I closed my eyes. No, you needed to believe that. You could have warned me about Carter. I didn't even know Carter, and I'm not responsible for the way you treat people. Her voice cracked. Everything was perfect before tonight. For you, it never was for me. She hung up. I didn't feel victory. I felt finality. The next morning, my assistant called before sunrise. The news traveled fast, she said. 3 partnership requests came in overnight, and there's something else. What? I asked. Carter Prescott emailed, personally. I paused. About what? He's stepping away from the engagement. He wants to talk professionally. I exhaled slowly. Tell him I wish him well, I said, but business goes through legal. She smiled through the phone. Already done. By noon, my name was everywhere that mattered. Not gossip blogs, not family group chats, industry rooms, strategy calls, decision tables. I walked into our office that afternoon, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was proving anything. I was leading. That evening, my mom showed up at my door. She looked smaller without her audience. You didn't raise me to shut us out. I leaned against the doorway. You raised me to survive being shut down. She swallowed. We were wrong. That word mattered. I'm not asking for apologies. I'm asking for respect. She nodded. You have it. A week later, Morgan called again. This time she didn't accuse. She asked. How did you do it? She said quietly. I thought for a moment. I stopped waiting for permission. There was a long pause. Then, I'm sorry. I believed her.
Months passed, my company expanded, my life steadied, the noise faded. At the next family gathering, my seat was at the center table, but I didn't need it because the truth had already landed where it mattered.
I hadn't fallen behind. I'd been building something they couldn't see. And in the end, I didn't take anything from them. I just took my life back. The funny thing about peace is that it doesn't arrive loudly. It settles in quietly, like sunlight filling a room you didn't realize had been dark. 3 months after the engagement dinner, my life looked nothing like it used to, and nothing like my family had predicted. Walsh and Associates moved into a larger office downtown. Glass walls, open light, a view that reminded me every morning how far I'd come. Not because I needed the reminder, but because I'd earned it. On a Friday afternoon, I stood in front of my team, watching them laugh over coffee and deadlines, and felt something better than pride. I felt calm. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. Dinner on Sunday? Just us. I considered it. Then I replied, okay. Sunday came without tension. No performance, no audience. My parents didn't brag. They didn't compare. They asked questions. And this time, they listened. My dad admitted he'd been afraid I'd fail. My mom admitted she'd mistaken control for care. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. A week later, I ran into Carter by chance at a professional mixer. No drama, no bitterness. You handled everything with grace, he said. I didn't. I just learned to stand still, I replied. He nodded. Morgan's rebuilding. I hope she does, I said, and I meant it, because revenge didn't look like destruction. It looked like freedom. The final moment came quietly, too. At the end of the year, Walsh and Associates hosted a charity tech summit. I was asked to speak, not because of my family, not because of rumors, but because the work mattered. As I stepped onto the stage, I scanned the room. My parents sat together, attentive. Morgan sat near the back, alone, but watching. No jealousy, no anger, just understanding. I didn't tell my story as a comeback tale. I told it as a truth about being underestimated, about being silent, about building in the dark. When the applause came, it wasn't overwhelming. It was warm. Later that night, Morgan approached me. You were always stronger than I thought, she said. I met her eyes. So were you. You just didn't know how to stop competing. She nodded slowly. I'm learning. We hugged, brief, real, without old wounds pulling us apart. Driving home, I thought about the girl I'd been at that dinner table. Quiet, mocked, dismissed. She hadn't been weak. She'd been patient. And patience, I learned, isn't waiting for someone to save you. It's giving yourself time to rise. I parked, stepped out into the cool night air, and smiled.